Yeah, Srivats Sampath is a serial entrepreneur who brings over 20 years of management, investment and technical expertise. An experienced leader, he has run large corporations and organizations as well as conceiving, funding and building successful startup companies. He previously served as founder, president and CEO of McAfee.com. He built the company into one of the largest and most successful subscription-based SaaS security services for consumers and small to medium-sized businesses. Sampath orchestrated a successful IPO in December '99, as well as the successful merger of McAfee.com with Network Associates, which has now become McAfee in October 2002. And McAfee has been acquired by Intel. Prior to McAfee, Sampath was the Vice President of Product Marketing at Netscape Communications and was founder, president and CEO of Discussions Corporations, a leading developer of email-based groupware solutions. He also served in executive level capacities for Centerpoint Software and as the chief architect of Intel's LAN enhancement operations. He started his professional career by co-founding Mecon, a healthcare software company which was subsequently acquired by GE. Most recently, Srivats was the founder, president and CEO of Mercora, a social music company. Srivats is also an active investor and director. He currently serves as the chairman of the board of Voltage Security. His past and current investments and directorships include WebTrends, SourceNext, Cadabra, Covalent, Tripwire, Determina, and Real Image, an Indian digital movie company. Srivats holds a number of patents, 9 issued and 3 pending, in areas of information security, the delivery of software as a service, and contextual internet advertising. He received his Bachelor of Engineering in Electronics and Telecommunications from NIT Trichy, 1976-1981 batch. He has delivered keynote addresses at world-leading financial forums and industry events such as Comdex and Networld plus Introp, and has appeared as a regular guest on major television networks such as CNN, CNBC, CNN Finance, and Bloomberg. Srivats is currently working on Idea Toaster, a new and more deterministic approach to early-stage venture capital, an evolving concept derived from lessons learned from his 20 years as an entrepreneur, operating executive, and investor. He is currently using his sabbatical to conduct independent research into the cognitive web, the role of human cognition and eye movement in improving the efficiency of web search, advertising, and applications. So in his keynote today, Srivats will share with us his 30 plus years of journey as an entrepreneur. He hopes that it will be an honest, self-critical, yet humorous answer to the question, should I become an entrepreneur? His talk will focus on topics such as traits and characteristics necessary for his line of work, taking an idea to the next step, finding and creating great teams, venture funding, the entrepreneurial lifestyle, and knowing when to step on the gas or throw in the towel. He plans to use examples from both his successful and not so successful ventures to illustrate his points. He prefers an interactive audience, so please ask a lot of questions. So now I invite Srivats to come and address NITians.
Hi, my name is Srivats Sampath. First, let me thank Sridhar. Sridhar's been trying to do this for the last 8 months. I hate doing this. I hate talking about myself. But he was so insistent. Finally, I just gave in. I said, okay, I'll do this. The reason I don't like to talk about myself is there are so many other better things to talk about. But, you know, it was I sat down Friday and I was kind of going, you've never done this before. Talk about yourself. Why don't we try and kind of change the topic a little bit? And so what you're going to listen here today is kind of a very, things that I learned in 30 years of being an entrepreneur. And you know how history, you know, is 2020 hindsight, right? And yeah, what you hear is all the great things. I want to tell you all the not so great things that happen when you're not. And don't take me wrong, because a lot of us go into this thinking, we'll go do a startup, we'll raise a venture round, the company is going to go public, and we're going to make a lot of money. That's like in the movies, right? Where you can pretty much write whatever ending you want. But my background, 1981, I've done 5 startups, or at least I'm doing my 5th right now. 2 failures, 2 public companies. One in the works, most notable is McAfee. I was the co-founder and chief architect at Intel of the network enhancement operation, which grew to about 7 or 8 billion. I was the VP of server product marketing in Netscape, which was a beautiful ride. You learned a lot. I'm currently an executive in residence at US Venture Partners, one of the leading venture firms. And what I do there is, it's just so that, my brain doesn't atrophy just sitting at home and not doing anything. I just go there. I help them with deals. I help them with not only bringing deals, but also kind of giving guidance on the deals that they should do. I do co-investments with them. And some of my co-investments that I did with them, one is Clustrix, which is a web-scale database engine, brilliant technology. The other one's Cloud Passage, which is a cloud security company. Acton, which is a marketing automation company up in Portland, and a few others. I'm a husband. I've been married 27 years, and a father. My son is 22 years. So, what drives an entrepreneur? A lot of little things, is it the intellectual challenge? Is it the sheer thrill of, doing the stuff? Is it the inability to work for others? Right? Or it's the only thing you know how to do well. Okay? There are different things that drive an entrepreneur. The money, absolutely. The quest to prove something. Okay? Or you just like to be scared shitless all the time. Okay? Now, so it depends. I mean, I see so many entrepreneurs sitting at US Venture Partners. I see people coming in. Each one's driven by a different need. Now, let me just do a show of hands. How many of you are entrepreneurs? How many of you want to be entrepreneurs? Yeah, the best line of work you can ever think of. Seriously, I've done 5. And what I do typically is I'll do a startup, I'll do it for 4 years, I'll take a year off, and I'll travel, I'll read, I'll learn something else, and come and start a completely different company. Okay? Something that I'm not experienced at. So if you look at my portfolio of companies that I've started, the first one was a healthcare software company, which I started after dropping out from Northwestern, took a car, drove down to California, sat down with my cousin, and we said, okay, we're going to do a healthcare software company. We were talking 1983. Okay? We had PCs, floppy drives. I mean, the 10 megabyte hard drive still hadn't been delivered for the PC yet. And I was programming in assembly. And my partner was programming in BASIC. So I was doing all the underlying stuff, and he was doing all the basic programming. Now, let me tell you, in 1983, we used to sell the software to hospitals in the Bay Area for 20 grand, 20,000 bucks. Okay? 16 floppies. Okay? And with 3 people going in, it's a Seton Medical Center, all these hospitals were using our software. And the poor soul sitting behind the PC at that time was just doing nothing but swapping floppies in and out. Okay, but that that was the technology available at that time, and there was an opportunity. The company went public, and then GE Medical came in and acquired it because they felt that it's something that they needed in their portfolio. Now, after MECON, we all faced the same situation that Indians face, which is which company gets your green card. In 1983, there were only 4 companies that got your green card. It was National, Intel, there's 2 more. Name doesn't come to my mind. So I went to Intel and I said, I know assembly programming. And the guy said, wow, it's very cool. Yeah, to the 8086. I said, absolutely. I can push pop registers and do all kinds of fun stuff for you. So they put me on the debugger for the 286, which is how to, I don't know if you guys probably don't even know this, but it used to be an in-circuit emulator. So you actually took the chip out and you put this little thing in and had a whole bunch of cables going out, and you could step, you could do all kinds of amazing stuff with it. So that's where I got my break at Intel, and it's the longest I've ever worked in a company, because that's how long it took to get my green card. It took 7 years to get it. At the 7th year, the day I got my green card, I took my sabbatical. Intel had sabbatical, and I hadn't taken a single day of vacation for 7 years. So I took 6 months off, traveled all over, came back, turned in my resignation, and went into the startup. Right? So what drove me to do that? There was the fascinating thing there was, 7 years at Intel can numb your brain. Okay. Then, in both in a good and a bad way. I mean, you learn a lot of stuff, but the process kills you. You sit there and there's a slurp. We used to call it the strategic long-range planning, which is like 5-year planning. Half the people who started Slurp weren't alive when the 5 years came around, right? So it got to a point where I said, look, I need something dynamic. I need to be the boss. I need to make the calls. And I went and did my second startup, which was Discussions, which was in groupware. And groupware, again, is something that I had no idea about. Notes, I don't know if you guys remember Lotus Notes. At that time was one of the big software stuff out there. I said, I'll go do a poor man's notes. And this was in Portland, Oregon. And built it, was very cool. All of 3 customers bought it. And then I come down to the Bay Area and I say, okay, I'm going to raise it up. Talk to venture capitalists, talk to a whole bunch of people. There are 2 things they said. One, go find a CEO who's white. Okay, we're talking early 90s. So you got to give them a little bit of break on that. And they said, you have to move it down to Portland. And that's when I said, bullshit, no. I'm going to stay in Portland because I like it there. And I'm going to try and get it funded in Portland. There's exactly 1.5 VCs in Portland. And they had no clue about technology. So they invested in companies like Costco. They made boatloads of money on Costco. And I'd go in and say, this is groupware. And they'd say, eyes glaze over. And, soon the admin's coming in with messages for him and he's taking his phone calls, all that stuff. So, long story short, we said, screw it, it's not going to work. But it was also a message that I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. So I said, what do I do next? So that's around the time Netscape was starting, and one of my bosses moved down from Portland to join Netscape, and he said, look, come down to Netscape. And it was the best and the worst decision I ever made. The best decision was the fact that I moved out of Portland and came to the Valley. The worst decision I ever made was I didn't listen to my little voice saying, you don't work well for other people. While it was a great ride, I just didn't enjoy it. Okay. Working for other people is just not my cup of tea. Okay. I'd rather work for myself. And so after the ride, I said, fine, let's get back on the bandwagon to do a startup. That's when I did McAfee. And we put a brilliant team together. Again, timing is everything. So McAfee was brilliant in the sense that, not because of anything that I contributed to it, we just happened to come up with a product at the right time, and one guy in Indonesia happened to write one of the most virulent viruses the world has ever seen. The I Love You virus, I'm sure you've heard of it. It came out through the globe, it was like a tsunami, right? And we were sitting there and collecting checks. That's how we got started. We went public. We were trading at about 2.43 billion in market cap. I was on CNN, CNBC, that whole Sri, that you read my entire bio, poor guy, I felt so bad for you. But it was a beautiful ride. Again, the thing about startups, it's not about how smart it is. It's not about how deep technologically it is. It is about riding a wave. So out of the 5 times that I've done companies, 2 I've ridden the wave, 2 I have not. Okay? So you have a wipeout. If you're into surfboarding and things like that, that's a wipeout. You go boom, and then you come back. And now, I meet people who are in it for the money, which is perfectly fair. This is a capitalistic country. It's all about making money. It's all about finding your dream. But there are some people I meet who are in it for just the pure passion. And that passion shows. So there was a question, I think, in one of the panels about what kind of companies get funded, both from being on this side of the table and that side of the table as far as asking for funding and also providing funding. I fund the most passionate entrepreneur because I know that the person believes in that thing. He is going to work his ass off to make it work. And if it's not going to work, he'll be the first person to come and tell you, look, I think I made a mistake. That is the person that you invest in. Now, finding that person is 1 in probably 50, maybe 1 in 60. But you will see them. Once you see them, you know who they are. And you know why they are meant to be who they're meant to be. We funded a company, I don't know if you guys know this, called Yammer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right? David Sachs, brilliant founder, brilliant CEO, arrogant as hell. Okay? But he does what he says he wants to do, and he delivers it beautifully. The other company was Box.net. We're investors in Box.net. Aaron Levy, 22 years old. The passion that that kid has to build a company of lasting value, not to, they've had multiple buyout offers, all that stuff. Nothing. He's building it. He wants it to be the next big whatever. Those are the kinds of entrepreneurs that get funded. Those are the kind of entrepreneurs who make big things happen. Those are the kind of entrepreneurs who hone their skills to be able to stand in front of a crowd like this and say, believe. Right? And the entire room goes, I believe. Hallelujah. Right? That is very, very important. I mean, the advice that I give entrepreneurs all over the place is you have to be able to have the clarity of vision. You got to be able to deliver that clarity, that message very clearly. And you've got to be able to deliver it in a way that the other person understands. Okay? That is very important, especially for people who come from our side of the world where we have different accents and different ways we pronounce. These all matter. These all matter, believe me. Why do I speak the way I speak? It's because I have found out in the 30 years of being in the United States, you have to have that clarity of diction, you have to have that clarity of message, you have to have that clarity of vision, and you need to have that confidence and fortitude to come in and say, you know what, believe in me, I'm going to do this. Because that is what sells them. They all know technologies will pivot, they all know companies will pivot, they all know that the business plan you start with day 0 is not the one that ends up on day 180. It's a completely different company. Every company that I've started, the original thought process was very different from the eventual company that showed up and went public or showed up and went down, right? So you have to, I'm a telecom guy, so you have to impedance match with the other person on the other side, and that is a very important thing. I see a lot of entrepreneurs come in, and they will ramble. They will ramble for a long time. And I'll just, walk out of the room. Come back, and they'll still be rambling. Okay? You got 60 seconds, or at the most, let's say, I may be exaggerating, 5 minutes to get your message across. What is it you're trying to do? Why you think it's great? Why it's going to make money? Right? That is just to get the funding, and then after that, you've got to go build the company. But I'm trying to give you an idea. Now, when you look at this list of things, the priority changes depending on where you are. If you're an early entrepreneur, the money drives you first. If you're a serial entrepreneur like me, the money doesn't drive me at all. Okay? It is about trying to prove something to myself. What am I trying to prove to myself? That I'm actually smart and not lucky. Okay? And every time I try and go answer that question, the answer comes back lucky. Yeah, Again, that's being honest with yourself. Yeah. That's why I had a hard time with this presentation today, which is, why am I coming and questioning people about the fact that, oh, serial entrepreneur, 2 IPOs? No, it's all luck. Seriously, it is all luck. You make your own luck, but it's still all luck. Okay. Now, here's the profile of I kind of said, what would I? What were some of the qualities? Not exactly me, but there's a lot of profiling. So you have to be impatient as hell. Okay? You have to be impatient. It's not like, this is not a government job. It's not like a corporation. Okay? You have to make a decision in 15 minutes flat, and you've got to get the entire company working on it. At the same time, on the other side, you have to be a long-term focus. So what happens is when I go to a meeting, I want someone to tell me within like 3 minutes what they're trying to say. If they don't, I tune them out. At the same time, I know what my long-term focus is to build a great company, build value, build revenue, right? So it's very enigmatic trying to be an entrepreneur. It's kind of schizophrenic as hell. You don't know which side of the brain is working on you at that time. You have to be arrogant. Because if you're not arrogant, people are not going to believe you. A nice, decent, humble, yeah, I'm so good, they're going to say, yeah, he's a boring guy, right? Walks in and says, I'm going to own 3/4 of this market, and they take notice. They know that you probably have no clue how you're going to get to that 3/4 of that market, but they know that you have the confidence and the arrogance to go try to figure it out. At the same time, you have to be humble, because you will get hit by so many different things that you've not anticipated.
I would call chutzpah, not arrogant.
Yeah, I mean, wordsmithing, you're right. Absolutely. But arrogance also helps. I take notice of arrogant guys coming in, but what that does is it gets my attention. I'm going, okay, this guy's arrogant, so let's look behind the curtain, right? If you don't come in with that arrogance, I don't even think about looking behind the curtain. So there are some guys, for example, Scott McNeely walked in just 5 days ago and pitched his company. As a BSD, he walks in and he fills up a room, and you want to fund the guy, right? So then, of course, Scott's done amazing stuff. But again, there is something to it. Your attention deficit. You can't afford to provide 100% of your attention to all things that you want to do. So there will be an attention deficit, but at the same time, you have to be maniacally focused. Again, talk about being schizophrenic, right? You can't suffer fools. You cannot suffer fools in this business. You fire them as soon as, they turn out to be not even close. Even if you get a signal which is, maybe this person is not the right one, you got to move fire. Okay. I have fired so many people, it's not funny. But there's a reason for it. The reason for the firing is they can make the atmosphere so toxic. So at McAfee, we had a 90-day clause. We hire you. The first 90 days, if you don't prove yourself, you're fired. And what that does, it puts a razor-sharp focus not only on the hiring process, because the manager does not want to fire someone after 90 days. It also puts a tremendous focus on the manager to make sure that the employee succeeds within the first 90 days. Sometimes you look at it and say it's very cruel, but capitalism is cruel. Capitalism is about squeezing the most efficient business out of your model, and it has very little room for warm and fuzzy things. I'll skip over a few things. The other one's in denial. The reason we're entrepreneurs is we are in denial. We're in denial about how hard it is. We are in denial about how big the market is. We are in denial about how easy the technology is. We are in denial about how quickly we can build it. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of software people in the room. I mean, the mythical man month, right? People come in with these nice Gantt charts which say, I'm going to ship in Q3 of 2012. You know that's not going to happen. But At the same time, it's that being in denial is what gets you to think about these things. At the same time, you have to be brutally honest about, can you do it? Is it doable? If it's not doable, what do you cut? How do you get it to ship? Because nowadays, markets, look, if you look at my last 30 years, I've been through 3 major shifts, right? One is the PC, the other one was the internet, the third one was Web 2.0, and now it's all about the cloud, right? What's happening is that time is shrinking. So if you take a year and a half to build your product, there's a high probability that market's gone. Anyone doing social networking right now is late. That battle's been won, right? People who are doing cloud right now are also slightly late. What else are you going to do? Except put it in your slides. When Salesforce.com can go put cloud in their slides, right? You know that they're behind the curve. And the last one is, you have to be all over the map. As a startup, you have to be all over the map because you don't know. You don't know where you are. At the same time, you have to be crisp and clear, right? So all I'm trying to say here is, look, it's a fun job. It's crazy as hell. And once you get into it, you are just dealing with so many different emotions, things, that your head will spin. But all that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if you deliver a great company with great revenue and value, you can deliver a company without revenue and value too. But that is, at the end of the day, that's the goal. That's where you have to be maniacally focused. So in a nutshell, what is an entrepreneur? It represents all the aspirations, dreams, hopes, fears, frailties in humans, right? Represented in a cap table, for those of you who know what a cap table is, right? But the investors always want to bring on the next seasoned world-class executive to come run the show. That's your life, in a nutshell. How many of you are VC funded here? Yeah. Is it fair? Yeah. It's funny. That's the way they work. They look at you and they say, great idea, brilliant guy, but he's not a CEO material. We'll go get this other guy who is great, who'll come in and spend a couple of $1 million, run the company to the ground, and then, that's it. Okay. So, which leads to my lessons learned, right? It's your dream. You got to believe in it. You got to believe in it like nothing else. Got to have the testicle of fortitude to say, you know what, don't screw with me. This is my vision. I'm going to build it. Build around me, but just don't replace me. Because I've seen companies where the founders have been sidelined, and it just goes, it tanks. Because you cannot rent passion. It happened with Steve Jobs. It happened with Steve Jobs. Follow your blink moment. How many of you guys read the book Blink? Okay, if you've not read it, read it. It's a brilliant book. It talks about how your subconscious brain analyzes things before even your conscious brain analyzes it. And it gives you an answer, right? Now, we are tuned not to listen to that. But you have to reprogram yourself to listen to it. I always go by my blink moment. What's the first thing that popped in my head in the first 15 seconds? I heard something. I actually write it down. And 9 times out of 10, that blink moment works. The reason I say that's important is as you start to build a company, you will get so much advice. You'll get a board member coming in and saying, you should go into this area. Right? You'll get a Gartner consultant saying, you got to go do this. And you're going to get people, and nowadays, of course, on social networks, everybody is an expert. They'll come in and say, oh, this company's all screwed. They got to go into this space, otherwise they're toast. It's during those times, that blink moment is very important. Kind of sticking to what you started with. There's a reason you did that, because your unconscious brain said, this is a great idea, go build it. Okay? Never let anyone define who you are. Okay? If I see a lot of you guys have come, probably in the recent past. I came here in 1982. Okay? Those days, Indians were considered good engineers, not great CEOs. Okay. And it was pretty prevalent in the Valley. Great engineer. Can he be a CEO? No. Okay. You can't let people define you. You got to say, I want to be a CEO. I want to be a vice president. You know, and if you let that, I'm just looking at all my jobs. The only job where I had a non-vice president or president title was at Intel, because I didn't have a choice. I had to get my green card. I said, give me whatever title, right? But everywhere else, I demanded what I wanted, and I got it. Okay? It's very important for you to realize that. You're never going to get something unless you ask for it or demand for it. It is cultural too. I mean, we all come from India where we have this propensity to be very referential or respectful. It's a great quality when it comes to your mom and your dad and your uncles and your aunts and everybody. It's not a great quality when it comes to your job. Because this country, the way it works, you need something, you demand it. And you demand it by looking the person in the eye and saying, I'm worth it. We talked about arrogance. I'll pass over it. Loyalty. Loyalty is priceless. Okay. My team, every company that I've started with in the last 15 years has been with the same team. Okay. These are guys I've known for many, many years, brilliant people. And we're like, you know, if you've see all those World War II movies where there are, you know, the groups of guys who go to war and back and then come back and again go back to war. It's very similar to that. I got a team of guys who will join me when I do a startup. Some people will pass because, you know, they have some existing gig going on and will opt not to participate. But, you know, second time around they'll come back.